What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to another edition of Jets Latest, where we give you the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, Dane Martinez. They call me Speeds, the spitting statistician, and we continue to look at different position groups for the Jets and what they may do moving forward into 2025. It's an important time of the year, right? We have the training combine in Indianapolis, looking at all the potential draft picks. We have free agency on the horizon, and it is kind of the season where there is a ton of buzz about potential trades, about who may be moving in free agency. So let's look at the Jets' defensive line. The Jets' defensive line was actually a pretty strong unit for the Jets last year. We all know that the Jets have an above-average defense, and we know about the guys in the secondary, right? But the D-line was really good as well. Against the pass, if you look, and they had 42 sacks, you may think that that is kind of in the middle of the league or just average. And that was. The 42 sacks was 12th in the NFL. But they were 4th in the NFL in pressure rate. They got pressure on the quarterback 32.2% of the time. That's pretty much a third. 1 out of every 3 times a quarterback dropped back to pass against the Jets, they wound up under pressure. That is a good kind of statistic. And here's the other part, which really emphasizes how solid to strong the defensive line was. The Jets got 32% pressure, 4th best in the league, but they did it by only blitzing 26% of the time. The blitz rate for the Jets was 26th in the league, so they didn't have to blitz in order to get pressure on the quarterback. What that is a testament to is that the front four, the guys up front, were able to get pressure on their own. The guys up front, the D-line I'm talking about, they also were really good at stopping the run. The Jets allowed only 4.1 yards a carry, teams running the ball against them. That was 4th best in the NFL, but they allowed only 1.4 yards a carry before contact. Okay, so that means running backs were not able to kind of get a runway, get themselves going, because that D-line was kind of there, making pressure, making tackles, and getting contact on the running back. That 1.4 yards a carry before contact was the best number in the NFL. They were the best in the league at kind of touching and contacting the running back before they got going. They also allowed explosive runs of 10 or more yards only 10% of the time. That was in the top half of the NFL. So you look under the hood, this Jets defensive line was a pretty good unit in 2024. Now, some of that is because they had Quinnen Williams. We all know about Quinnen Williams. He is a beast. He is a young stud, one of the best defensive tackles in the game. But they had some other guys as well. 2 specifically, outside of Quinnen Williams, are going to be free agents in this offseason. The first is Javon Kinlaw. Javon Kinlaw is only 28 years old. He was making $7.25 million, and outside of Quinnen Williams, he was the best defensive lineman for the Jets last year. He played in 61% of the snaps. He was in all 17 games for the green and white, and he had 40 tackles, 4.5 sacks on his own, 5 tackles for loss, and he forced 2 fumbles. Another player on the defensive line that played pretty well for the Jets was Solomon Thomas, 30-year-old. He was making $3 million, played in 40% of the snaps in all but 1 game for the Jets, 26 tackles, 3 tackles for a loss, and he had a forced fumble on his own as well as about 4 sacks last year. So these are guys that really did contribute to what they were doing. Now, like I mentioned, Kinlaw made $7.25 million. All right. Solomon Thomas made $3 million. Kinlaw at $7.25 million, and now coming off a good season, may command more in the open market. Solomon Thomas, who was good, but not as good as Kinlaw, was making $3 million. He may get even more as well. So if they are not able to bring these guys back, and I do believe that Mogi will try to bring at least one of them back. If they can get Kinlaw back at a reasonable price, I do think that would be plan A. But if not, where might they go in free agency? Like I have been saying all week long as we look at different position groups, the Jets have about $24 million in cap space, okay? That's 20th in the league. They do not have the money of the Patriots at $125 million, the Raiders at around $100 million, 99 to be exact. They don't even have the cap space of a Commanders, the Bears, or the Cardinals. They all have between 70 and $90 million in cap space. So they can go out and kind of spend big money on guys. The Jets have to be a little bit more frugal, but at the same time, they are not one of the teams that are already over the cap. Unfortunately for for the Falcons, the Seahawks, the division rival Bills, the Browns, and the New Orleans Saints, they're already over the cap. So they're not going to be contenders for Kinlaw or any other high-priced defensive lineman. Here are some options, okay? I think there's a few options, and one place to look is Cincinnati. Like the Jets, Cincinnati has two defensive tackles that are free agents. Now, the Bengals do have $61 million in cap space, which is pretty good, a lot more than the Jets, but if you've heard the buzz, they need to pay Jamar Chase. They need to pay T. Higgins. They're looking like they're going to have to pay Mike Gesicki. And Joe Burrow has already said he may have to restructure his contract just so that the Bengals can afford these guys. They are focused on keeping their passing game intact, so I don't know if they're going to be able to retain their defensive tackles. The first is Sheldon Rankings. He was making $12 million, though. He's a 31-year-old. You know the name of Sheldon Rankings. He is a good defensive tackle, but he missed the last 7 games last year due to a viral infection. I don't know if he's going to command that kind of salary again. If they could get him at a discount, it's a possibility. The other guy they have in Cincinnati is B.J. Hill. B.J. Hill was really good. 56 tackles, 7 tackles for a loss. You pair a guy like him with Quinnen Williams, and even if they don't have the kind of depth that Kinlaw and Thomas provide, that could be a very interesting combo. The other thing they can do is bring back an old friend. Folo Fatukasi was with the Houston Texans last year. You may remember the name. He was with Houston on a 1-year deal that was at $5 million. However, the Texans only have $4 million in cap space. So they may not be able to spend money. That is the third lowest among any team that's not, over the cap. And here's the thing. Fatu didn't have a great year with Houston, okay? Only 24 tackles. He only had 1 sack, only 4 tackles for a loss, and he only played in 28% of the snaps for the Houston Texans. So they may let him walk, and coming off something of a down year, he may not command the $5 million that he did in the open market last time around. They may be able to get him for something like $3 million, the same price tag that Solomon Thomas had. And if you remember him, his best years were in fact with the Jets back in 2020 and 2021. So he may be an option, although I do believe that they're going to wind up trying to bring back Javon Kinlaw. Remember, Javon Kinlaw was with the 49ers and part of that great team. He was a first round draft pick a few years back. So this is a guy with a pedigree. Speaking of draft picks, there are some options in the draft as well. The thing is, there is one stud we know in the draft out of Michigan, Mason Graham. He is projected to be a top 10 pick. I don't think the Jets are going to use number 7 overall on Mason Graham, but they do have a second round pick early in the second round at number 42 overall. They do have a late third round pick at 92 overall. Here are some of the names that may be available and could be targets for Aaron Glenn and Mogi here at that stage of the draft. There's Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. There's TJ Sanders out of South Carolina. There's Alfred Collins out of Texas, Shamar Turner from Texas A&M, and Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. These are solid to above average, B plus, A minus graded defensive linemen that could be available. Remember, I do believe that the primary areas of need that the Jets are going to address in the draft are offensive line, safety, I think is a definite need. If Tyler Warren is there, maybe the tight end, but the Jets always, and most teams, should build from the inside out. So if they even get a guy like Will Campbell on the O-line at number 7 overall, they could go ahead and try to address the defensive line moving forward, in the second, third, or even fourth round for some depth pieces. Ultimately, here's what I think the Jets are going to do, okay? I think they are going to make every effort to bring back Kinlaw. Kinlaw was really good. Like I said, the 5 tackles for loss, the 4.5 sacks. He was literally a great pair with Quinnen Williams. I think that will be job number 1. The only problem is he was already making over $7 million and coming off a good year. He could command more than that in the open market. So if they don't get Kinlaw, maybe they try Solomon Thomas at a kind of basement bargain deal. I don't think they're going to be able to get any of those Cincinnati Bengals who also will command a price tag kind of at the level of Javon Kinlaw. I think Folu Fatu is an option if they can get him on the cheap. But what I think they're going to do, try to get Kinlaw back and use something like a third round pick in the draft, maybe an Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee, is someone you need to keep an eye on this week at the draft combine in Indianapolis. But remember, the Jets were a strong defensive line. They got pressure on the quarterback with just 4 guys. They were able to stop the run, and they had the league's best average of only 1.4 yards a carry against them before contact. That all speaks to the fact that that defensive line was moving the line of scrimmage, getting pressure on the quarterback, and new head coach Aaron Glenn, who is a defensive mind, will like that, and that allows, in combination, working together with that secondary, Sauce Gardner, who, by the way, looks like maybe dating Ice Spice. Did you see that? That looks a little crazy. Maybe we'll talk about that sometime next week. I told you DJ Reed is a priority. You have those secondary guys together with a defensive front that can move the line of scrimmage, and that is a recipe for a top 10 or maybe even top 5 defense for Aaron Glenn in his first season. That's what the Jets are going to do, or should do, at defensive line. Make sure you go ahead and like, subscribe, and tell all your Jet fan friends about Jets Latest, where I, Speeds the Spittin' Statistician, give you the latest on the Jets, Jets. Next week, we'll talk about edge rusher. We'll look at what happened in the combine, and we will continue to look at free agency and the draft here as the green and white look to prepare for a new era starting in 2025. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest, for the latest on the Jets. We'll see you next time. Peace.